Chapter 27 Lord Vyre. Now that he had somehow managed to fly across the waters of Lake Hylia, Aghanim was feeling pretty confident in himself. This, plus surviving the Zora-infested sewers and gaining the affections of a girl like Miranda, had the robed wizard ready to take on the world. For tonight, though, he was focused on helping Miranda find a way into Snake Palace. Together, they moved along the bottom of the outer wall, trying to stay ahead of the patrolling guards, whose torchlight threatened to expose them if they didn't keep moving. However, they had gone around almost half the wall with no luck.
"There has to be a window or something around here,"
Miranda griped quietly.
"Can't you just teleport us through the wall?"
"That is not a good idea," he explained. "I have no idea what's on the other side, or even how thick the wall is. If I try to teleport without being able to see where I'm going, we could reappear inside a rock or a person, and I've heard enough horror stories about that to know it's a bad idea." Miranda sighed with disappointment, but it was the truth. There was no way he could teleport them through the outer wall of the palace, but maybe they could go over it. It was worth a shot, and in the moonlight, he couldn't see any gates or windows on the side of the wall. So, making her let out a startled gasp when he suddenly pulled her close, Aghanim looked up, and an instant later they were in the air, about halfway up the wall. Now feeling very tired from this attempt after doing so much to get across the water, it became an exhausting struggle to manage this feat again, but even so, he fell a little short. The top of the wall was about a meter away, but the robed wizard was so tired that he just couldn't go the rest of the way. For a moment, it would seem like they were doomed to fall back to the rocky ground, but then Miranda pointed her arm upward and sunk her hookshot into the stone, stopping their fall. Both breathing a sigh of relief, she started to smile, but then the smile faded when the chain jerked, and they looked up to see that the grapple was slowly breaking through the old stone.
"What do we do?"
Miranda asked, looking back at him.
"I can't fire this again without unhooking it, and if I try to pull us up, we'll fall. We're just too heavy together."
"Okay, I have an idea," he replied nervously, trying not to move. "I'm going to let go of you, and then try to teleport myself on top of the wall while you use that thing. Ready? Go!" Aghanim let go of her, and it was nice to see Miranda catapult upwards until she was safely on top of the wall, but that was where the nice part ended. He tried, but he just couldn't manage to make himself vanish again. So the robed wizard fell back down the wall, certain that he was about to bust his head open on the rocks, but then there was an outcry of surprise when he landed on something a lot softer than rocks. There was also more light now, and having the wind knocked out of himself, it took him a second to realize that he had landed on two patrolling guards, with the light being from their fallen torch. Now rolling off of the unconscious guards, or were they dead? He hoped they weren't dead, since he wasn't fond of killing unless he had to, but Aghanim didn't have a lot of time to check on them since Miranda was probably already inside the palace by now. A quick casting of his healing spell took care of the minor injuries he'd taken during the fall, and now he had to find a way in. As Aghanim had seen before, there were no windows on the wall, and he also hadn't seen any more patrolling guards. So why not check the front gate? It probably wasn't the best idea, but he couldn't think of any other options at this time. So the robed wizard quickly moved back around the wall, all the way to the front, where he was surprised to see a complete lack of guards. There were none at the open gate, none at the door, or on the wall above, or anywhere. But that was ridiculous. This was the home of the governor of Hyrule's entire southern province. So how was it even possible for the front entrance to be unguarded? He was about to head toward the door when a kind of growling sound came from behind, so he spun around to see the two guards that he had fallen on. It was expected for them not to be very happy with him, and Aghanim was glad that they weren't dead, but something was wrong. Maybe it was a trick of the orange light, but their skin seemed to be a kind of bluish-purple color, and as they gritted their teeth, the robed wizard could see that they were very sharp. Before he could say anything, they let out a kind of hissing shriek and leapt high into the air, much higher than a regular person should have been able to. "What the?" he asked while looking at them. With clawed fingers outstretched, they closed in to grab him, but Aghanim simply tossed a fireball, striking the first one in the chest. He shrieked before crashing to the ground hard, seeming to explode into a small swarm of bats that quickly flew away. The other guard had been knocked off course, but he still landed on his feet, wasting no time in rushing towards the robed wizard. Aghanim ducked down under his grabbing claws, coming back up with an uppercut that should have knocked him off his feet, but the guard barely twitched. Aghanim punched him in the mouth and spun around to kick him in the chest, but this did nothing, and the guard responded by shrieking again while running forward and tackling Aghanim to the ground. The guard then opened his mouth and tried to bite him, and probably would have succeeded if the robed wizard hadn't struck him in the stomach with another fireball the moment they landed. Just like the last one, this guard exploded into a small swarm of bats that flew away into the night sky. Now taking a moment to rest and figure out in his mind what just happened, Aghanim was just thankful that he could throw fire, and that there weren't any more of those things. Or were there? "Miranda!" he exclaimed while scrambling to his feet. If there were more of those creatures in the palace, then it would explain why there had hardly been any guards around, but as far as he knew, Miranda couldn't throw fire like he could. Aghanim was terrified at the prospect of something happening to her, so he forgot all about caution, running through the open gate and not stopping until he was through the front door of the palace, which also happened to be unlocked. Once inside the grand main hall, the first thing he saw was bodies. There were dozens of guards lying dead on the floor, their skin pale and no blood to be found, regardless of the puncture wounds on their necks. One of the bodies then sat up, its skin bluish-purple, and its clawed hands reaching. Another fireball ended this one's existence, exploding it into a small swarm of bats that flew out the nearby window, but so far there was no sign of Miranda. This was probably because she had entered the castle through a window or something on the upper levels, so Aghanim ran through the central staircase, burning any of the bodies that sat up along the way. The palace itself was much smaller than the North Palace where the king lived, so there were only 3 floors, but each one had its share of these dead, demon guard things. "Miranda!" he called as he went from room to room. "Miranda, where are you?" Aghanim imagined that these creatures would have been hard to fight if he didn't have fire magic, but he did have it, so they were put down just as fast as they sat up. There was still no answer from Miranda as he stormed through the second floor, so it was back to the central stairs and up the top floor of the palace, where a locked door awaited him. It was a solid barrier with heavy metal bolts that were meant to keep out intruders, but they made one mistake. The keyhole was large as well, enough so for the robed wizard to look through it into the next room, which in turn allowed him to successfully teleport inside. The creatures inside were clearly taken by surprise at his sudden appearance, jumping up from the enormous dining table where they were sitting at, and quickly being destroyed by the dozens of fireballs that Aghanim threw before a single one of them could attack. Now they were gone, and he could see the true horror of the room. More bodies lying on the table, one in front of each chair where the creatures had been sitting, including the body of the province's stout governor. The governor's body was at the head of the table, in front of something that looked like the guards, but bigger and with bat-like features, including wings. "Welcome," the monster said after appearing to drink the last of the governor's blood through the neck. "Welcome to my palace, friend. I am Lord Vyre. And you are?" "Aghanim," the robed wizard replied while stepping forward. "You're pretty polite, seeing as I just killed most of your friends." The bat-like Lord Vyre chuckled for a second before standing up, making Aghanim gasp when he moved to the side, revealing that Miranda was shackled to a chair behind his. Her hood and mask were off, her weapons lying useless on the floor, and she appeared to be having some trouble breathing, while some blood dripped down the small punctures on her neck. "So, you're Aghanim, are you?" Vyre asked, moving around to the side of the table. "When I caught this succulent morsel, she was trying to escape from my chambers with a small chest, and it was your name that she tried to scream when I pinned her down and sank my teeth into her neck. I was tempted to turn her right then, but her blood was so sweet that I wanted to make it last. You think I can get a month out of her?" Instead of yelling at the monster or expressing his rage, Aghanim's answer was to simply toss 2 fireballs at Vyre, but the monster was much faster than its minions. Spreading its wings, Vyre flew upwards to avoid the fire, and then it drove at the robed wizard at incredible speeds, giving Aghanim less than a second to teleport out of the way. Vyre hit the ground where he had been standing, and slid a little before slowing down enough to be able to turn, so the robed wizard took advantage of the opportunity by tossing another fireball. It struck Vyre in the side, knocking him off balance enough for the creature to fall over, but unlike with the minions, it did not turn into a swarm of bats. In fact, aside from being a little singed, Vyre's was more or less unharmed. That meant that this battle was just beginning, and Aghanim was going to have to find some other way to defeat this monster if he wanted to save Miranda.